I think people assume that good negotiators are like these really hard, stern people and stern communicators. And Chris confirms that this is not the case. So, part of why I enjoyed this book so much is that it gives us a lot of specific tools on how to negotiate, but you're still able to weave it into your own authentic self. You're listening to Prospecting on Purpose, where we discuss all things prospecting, sales, business, and mindset. I'm your host, Sara Murray, a sales champion who's here to show you that you can be a shark in business and still lead with intentionality and authenticity. Tune in each week as we dive into methods to connect with clients, communicate with confidence, and close the deal. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Prospecting on Purpose. I am super excited about today's episode. It is a solo episode, but if you listen to the show, you know that I interview many authors of business books. So I thought it'd be fun to put together a list of business books that have most impacted me over my career. So we're going to go through 7 of my favorite books and the reasons why I like them. And then at the end, I'll also include a couple of honorable mentions, if you will. And just a quick note on this book club list. These books are outside of the amazing authors that I've had on this show. So in the show notes, I've put together an Amazon list of my favorite business books. So if any of these resonate with you, or if you want to check out the guest episodes, they're all going to be able to be found in one place. Going through my top 7 favorite business books. Number 1 is Rainmaking by Ford Harding. Attract new clients no matter what our field. This book was my first real business book that I read and implemented, and it has the softest place in my heart. I have moved with it everywhere over the past 20 years or so. My career started in marketing, and I credit this book to a majority of the foundational skills that I built everything else upon, especially around prospecting, cold calling, and building relationships from scratch. I was just getting so energized rereading what I underlined. And even though it is a bit of an older book, it has such great takeaways when it comes to prospecting. And so some of the takeaways in the book are still tried and true. Like everyone likes the sound of their own name. The rewards of personalizing can be substantial. This is a direct quote. If you're reaching out to a cold prospect, if you offer information of value to the prospective client and there's a sense of urgency about the visit, you can often get a meeting. So thinking about that one a little bit more, there's so much noise out there. There's so much competition. How often are salespeople reaching out to introduce their companies and their services, but they're not offering any special information? There's no personalization. There's no calls for urgency. What an easy way to differentiate yourself from the competition. So that's just like one little snippet that I grabbed off of one page. The entire book is like that, and it is a very meaty book. So that is Rainmaking by Ford Harding. The second book on our list is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, Negotiating as if your life depended on it. I loved this book so much. I have it in the audio and the physical format. Chris is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And the way the book is structured is that each chapter covers a different skill set. So he'll share a story about a hostage situation, and then he breakdowns the strategies and tactics that he used in that hostage situation and applies them to business and how we use it in our own negotiation skills. One of the most memorable skills that he covered for me is how we use our voice and our tonality. So people resonate more with the delivery of our words versus the actual words that we're using. So in his example, he'll share there's 3 different voice types. This late night DJ FM radio voice, a more playful and friendly voice, and then a direct assertive voice. And most of the time, you should be using this positive, playful voice. Following that voice is our late night DJ FM voice. And both of those really help exude confidence and also help the person we're negotiating with make a decision more easily. So, very rarely are we supposed to use the direct assertive voice. And it's funny because Chris shares a lot of science behind it that people make decisions more easily, more quickly if they're in a positive mood. And this direct assertive voice instantly puts people on their heels, they get defensive. And I think it's interesting because I think people assume that good negotiators are like these really hard, stern people and stern communicators. And Chris confirms that this is not the case. So, part of why I enjoyed this book so much is that it gives us a lot of specific tools on how to negotiate, but you're still able to weave it into your own authentic self. So, that is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Book number 3 is How to Win a Pitch by Joey Asher, the 5 fundamentals that will distinguish you from the competition. So much about sales is around influence. And what I enjoyed about this book is that the author gives us a lot of tangible ways to influence an outcome, but he keeps it really simple. And I think that's why it's successful. We are in the business of solving business problems. So if you focus your message on the business problems, then that becomes a lot more direct route to get your results. And his formula for winning any pitch is problem, solution, ask. So describe the problem as you understand it, present why your product or service solves that problem, and then ask for the order. It's straightforward and it keeps us focused. Another little tidbit that he shares in the book is when you're, building your presentation, you're building your pitch, focus it around 3 memorable points. What are the 3 takeaways you want your audience to remember and leave with? These are just some of the highlights, but Joey gets into presentation skills and negotiation tactics as well. It's a great book if you are someone who presents client facing frequently, or if you have to present to internal leadership to get buy-in. So I highly recommend How to Win a Pitch by Joey Asher. Book number 4, Playing to Win by AJ Lafley and Roger L. Martin. How Strategy Really Works. I read this book when I was leading a sales vertical, and my role touched a lot of different departments: marketing, engineering, product management, sales, project management. And it was a really great book to read when I was in the weeds on something complex, because it helped me really open my mind to find different gaps in the marketplace and the industry vertical that I could fill. And when I say I mean me and my business and my role and the other departments I just mentioned. As I was going through my notes preparing for this interview, the notes I took were very specific to that individual role. And the reason I liked it is it really broke down strategy specifics. Many of us, myself included, somewhat organically learn strategy by being mentored, seeing what our leaders are doing, seeing what our companies and our competitors are doing. Hopefully, we're listening to our clients and so on. But this book really got my wheels turning in so many different areas on how to actually find a missing product fit and then building an intentional strategy behind it. So I would recommend this book if you're trying to establish yourself as a strategic leader, and or if you have some complex tasks that you need to execute. This is going to open up avenues for your solutions to really hopefully get that brainstorming going and give you some new ideas. So that is Playing to Win by A.G. Lafley and Roger L. Martin. Book number 5, Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book is always in the mainstream media. You've probably heard of it or read it. It's popular because it's good, and really habits impact every area of our life, not just work and business. So why I really enjoyed it is that I have a lot of really big goals that I'm aiming for. And the only way that I'm going to be able to achieve them is by staying consistent with my good habits, eliminating or breaking bad habits, and overall really just staying disciplined. Personally, I'm someone who likes external accountability, but to get where I want to go, it's going to require discipline that I'm going to have to curate from within. And that's really what Atomic Habits does. So Atomic Habits by James Clear, great fit for anyone. Also really good gift if you need a gift idea for someone in your life. Number 6 is Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. I really love this book and I talk about it all the time. It's not work-centric per se, but the premise is basically the 2 authors realize that we spend so much time in our life learning things in school, learning things in work, taking time planning out sales strategies and revenue goals, but we don't really ever take the time to intentionally plan and design what we want our life to look like. Oftentimes, we kind of just let it happen to us. And since work is such a big part of our overall lives, this really is like a business book in some ways, and that's why it's on this list. The authors give us a lot of exercises to explore as you go through it, and it got my brain just totally working in a different way. And one of the most impactful lessons that I will share with you specific to work, the authors have you keep a journal. So think about like typical work week. Keep a journal of the daily tasks that you're doing. And as you're doing them, reflect back and think, how energized were you during the activity and how engaged were you during the activity? And if any of those activities put you in like a state of flow. So I kept track of this for a couple of weeks, and I'll just use this podcast as an example. If I'm researching and writing a podcast episode, if I have enough time, I'm usually super engaged with it. If I'm interviewing a guest, I'm super energized by the conversation. I always have adrenaline going after a guest interview. But where I am not engaged or energized is the actual editing of the podcast, writing the show notes, and so on. Those are not my flow state activities. But what helps is that once you've identified the areas where you're energized and where you're drained, then you can be more thoughtful about where you're spending that time and areas that maybe need to be delegated or shifted or removed completely. So now I actually outsource the editing and production of the show so that I'm not spending my time on areas where I feel drained. And instead, I'm focusing my energy and my focus into areas where I'm more engaged and energized. It's a really cool book. That's just one small example of an exercise they'll have you do. It's a great fit for anyone, especially if you're going through a period of transition, job changes, role changes, retirement. It's another great gift idea if you need a gift. So that is Designing Your Life. Number 7, our final book on the list is Quantum Success by Christy Whitman. And this book is a little bit more on the new age side of things, but I personally like viewing challenges, mistakes, hard conversations, negotiations, everything that happens in the business world as an opportunity for me to grow. So this book gives a lot of context and clarity about the energy of business and really how do we consciously choose how we show up at work. I'm going to read a quick quote here from the book just to give you an example of really like the energy behind work. Before you give your next big presentation or before sitting down for an important conversation with a colleague or a friend, decide in advance what it is you most want to convey, both with your words and with your energy. Clarify your intention, not just in terms of a specific outcome you hope to achieve, such as making a sale or reaching an agreement, but in terms of the overall vibe you want to create between you and your listener. I know that can come off a little bit woo-woo, but visualizing an outcome is something that athletes, politicians, celebrities, musicians, and so on, they all do this on a regular basis to achieve great success. So why wouldn't we do the same as business professionals? So Quantum Success by Christy Whitman, just a cool, different way to look about the energy of work and how we show up energetically and how that impacts our results and our successes. All right, those are my business book club recommendations for now. I have a few honorable mentions. I loved Crucial Conversations. I'm sure you've heard of it. The book covers tools for talking when stakes are high. It's really great if you're someone who doesn't like confrontation. So check out Crucial Conversations. I also enjoyed Sweet Success by Candace Nelson. She is the founder of Sprinkles Cupcakes. And this particular book is geared towards entrepreneurs, but she gives so many real examples that are highly relatable. Hopefully we can get her on the podcast soon to discuss the book, but I really enjoyed Sweet Success. I got a lot of like validation reading it. And then the last book I want to mention is a book called 101 Things I Learned in Business School by Michael W. Priest and Matthew Friedrich. It gives short, bite-sized takeaways of the overall business environment, and it's a great resource to quickly get up to speed on terminology if you feel shaky in any area. That series, 101 Things I Learned in Fill in the Blank, there's a couple of other different books out there, or a few other different books. So let's say you're supporting architects. You might want to pick up that book, 101 Things I Learned in Architecture School, so that you as the salesperson have more language to talk to your client. So check out that series. It's a pretty cool resource that I only recently learned existed. That's it for book club. I made an Amazon list of these, so I'll share it in the show notes. That Amazon list also will include The authors that have been on this show, they are all incredible. So if you haven't listened to those guest interviews, go back and listen to them. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And if you've read any of these books, or if you choose to read any of these books, I'd love to hear from you and how they impacted you. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Prospecting on Purpose podcast. If you loved what you heard today, subscribe to the podcast and please rate and leave a review. For more info on me, or if you'd like to work together, feel free to go to my website, saramurray.com. On social media, I'm usually hanging out at Sara Murray Sales. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.